Hare Krishna. Good morning, dear devotees from Sri Jagannath Puri Dham. These are our daily adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is our 45th session. We're calling Meeting in Kurukshetra. And today we're going to a new topic. We're still in Vrindavan. We haven't gone to Kurukshetra yet. But we've been hearing about how Uddhava met with Nanda and Mother Yashoda. And today we'll begin to hear something about the Gopis of Vrindavan. And our topics today will include 3 types of prema in Vraja, Utkanta Pradhan, Vishramba Pradhan, and Viveka Shunya Pradhan, and what those mean. Why it was that Uddhava never gave consolation to the cows or cowherd boys of Vraja. We'll speak something about the ghee of the heart and the lamp of love, and the first time that Uddhava and the Gopis saw each other. So, I'm a little excited today. Gora Graganya Gana Gotra Goloruharam Goranga Guratama Gopyara Kolpa Briksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshi Kavaram Satatam Namami Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Shaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat Vedi Ramayanesh Chaiva Purane Bharate Tata Adavante Chamadye Chahari Sarvatra Giyate Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shigurum Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Paramananda He Madhava Padunga Luchi Makaranda Se Makaranda Panakori Anande Bolo Hari Hari Harinka Name Vandavela Parikori Be Chakadola Se Chakadolanga Padaye Manamo Rahu Nirantare Manamo Nirantare Rahu Ha Krishna Boli Jiva Jao Ha Krishna Boli Jao Jiva Moteu Dada Radha Dava Moteu Dada Radha Dava Moteu Dada Radha Dava Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning, dear devotees from Sri Jagannath Puri Dham. It's our daily adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam, and this is our 45th session that we're calling Meeting in Kurukshetra. And today we'll speak something about Uddhava's meeting with the Gopis, and I'm hoping that we can go over text 44 to 46, the 46th chapter, the 10th canto, which speaks about the arrival of Uddhava in Vraja. So we've been hearing something in our last few sessions about how Uddhava was trying to console Nanda and Yashoda. Jiva Goswami in Laghu Vaishnav Toshini, in a purport in an earlier verse in this same chapter, raises an interesting question, which we covered in a previous discussion, but I want to look back at that now. The question is that why didn't Uddhava come with a message also for the cows? Cows are very important, very dear to Krishna. Why was there no message for the cowherd boys? So in his commentary, Jiva Goswami explains that in Gokul Braj, there are three types of prem. Utkanta Pradhan, or prem that has a predominance of longing. Utkanta means hankering for, crying for. Kanta means the neck. So utkanta literally means that the neck is coming up, or it means that one is beginning to choke and cry with this intense longing. And this, Jiva Goswami says, that type of love is possessed by Krishna's parents and by the gopis of Braj. The second type of prem in Gokul is Vishramba Pradhan. Vishramba means with some familiarity. And Jiva Goswami uses this to speak about the love that Krishna's friends have for him. And then there's Viveka Shunya Pradhan, love that doesn't have any discrimination. And that's the love of the cows. So Jiva Goswami explains that there's no necessity to give a message to the cowherd boys or to the cows, because the cows and the cowherd boys think that Krishna is actually present when he shows his spurti. They're so much absorbed in thought of Krishna, sometimes a spurti or a vision of Krishna comes, and they can't distinguish between the two. But those devotees who have this utkanta pradhan, this intense longing, they don't trust even Krishna's direct presence and what to speak of when they see a spurti. And so if they do see a spurti, they have some doubt later on because of this utkanta, this predominance of longing. And therefore, Jiva Goswami says, it's only the gopis and the parents of Krishna and all of Braj who feel separation. Jiva Goswami in Laghu Vaishnav Toshini, he goes on to explain that the cows, because their love, their prema is viveka shunya, it's indiscriminate, and because the boys had this vishramba pradhan prem, or some familiarity, they experience meeting Krishna as a spurti. And because the cows, because they have less intelligence, they're not studying higher mathematics and chemistry and like that, they're convinced that Krishna is actually present. Whereas the cowherd boys, because of their Vishrambha Pradhan Prem, they're firmly convinced that Krishna is definitely going to come from Mathura to join them. And they would speak about this in private. So it was only his parents and the gopis who had to be given some consolation. The cowherd boys would be peaceful without any consolation. And Jiva Goswami says, actually, if you tried to console them, then that would produce some doubt in them. What are you coming and trying to tell me all this for? Are you trying to suggest that Krishna may not come? They're so convinced that Krishna is definitely going to come. So amongst these living entities, these three who have these three types of prem, some were consoled, some were not consoled. So we'll go on now to text number 44, which we touched on lightly in our last session. These three verses, text 44, 45, and 46, I'd like to show a common thread between them and offer some particular purport to them. Evam nishasa bruvator vyatita nandasya krishnanu charasya rajan gopya samutaya nirupya dipan vastun samavyarcha dadonyamantun. When Uddhava finished, continued speaking with Nanda Maharaj, the Sukadeva Goswami describes it, Nishasa Vyatita, that the night Vyatita, it finished. And what happened when that night finished? Samutaya, Gopya Samutaya, the gopis, they rose up, and what was the first thing they did? Nirupya Dipan, they began to light deeps, lamps. But they were doing this like Vastun, like it's some ordinary, regular thing that they did every day. But this ordinary activity was their samapyarcha. This means their worship of Krishna. And they were doing, he mentions in particular, dodinyamantun. Amantan means to churn. We have the samudra manta, the churning of the ocean of milk. Dodinyamantam, they were churning this butter. So this was the first exposure that Uddhava has to the gopis of Braj. He hasn't met them yet, he hasn't even seen them yet, but he's seeing that they're lighting lamps, they're rising up, and they're churning yogurt into butter. We'll look back at this in a little bit. In the 45th verse, Sukadeva Goswami describes, Tadipa deeptire, manubir vireju, rajur vikarshad bhuja kankana shrija, chalanitamba stanahara kundala, trishat kapolaruna kunkumanaha. That as the gopis, they were churning this yogurt with these ropes, deepa deepta manubir vareju, the jewels began to shine on their body from those lamps. So I want to speak something today about what is this, why is it particularly mentioning when Uddhava first comes in contact with the gopis, what is the importance, the significance of this dodinyamantam, the churning of the yogurt? What is the significance of the description that the nisha, that the night was finishing? What is the significance of the phrase gopya samutaya, that the gopis, they were rising from their sleep? All of these points have some significance, and we'd like to explore them a little. So, Sanatana Goswami, in his Brihad Vaishnava Toshani, he gives some explanation why the gopis were shining. He said, first of all, they were shining from the light from the lamps. And he says, or the verse can mean they were shining with light that was greater than the lamps. Meaning that the shining of the gopis was from their nature. And the gopis became more beautiful by their jewels, or the gopis were making the jewels more beautiful by them. And what is the jewels of those gopis? He says that the gopis were making noise when they moved their arms with bracelets to pull the ropes. And they were also, this was also causing their hips, their breasts, and necklaces to move, while their cheeks were lit by their earrings, by their jewels on their ears. He said, or it can mean that their cheeks were shining from drops of perspiration from pulling the ropes, while their faces were anointed with kumkum, which became red from the effort of churning. The gems were naturally there on their limbs, or they were ornaments sent by Krishna to please Krishna. Let's go on to text number 46, and we want to go back and look at some of the different points, some of the very different, brilliant points that Sukadeva Goswami describes here. Utgayitanam aravindalochanam brajangananam divam asprisadvani dadnascha nirmantana sabda mishrito nirasyate yena disham amangalam. So the gopis, while they were churning, Sukadeva Goswami says, Udgayatinam, they were loudly singing. Udgaya. And that singing, they were singing about Krishna. And that sound of their singing was mixed. Dadnaschadnyamantana shabda mishrito. Mishrito means mixed. It was mixed with the shabda, with the sound of their churning the butter. And Sukadeva Goswami says, Nirasyate yena disamamangalam, that sound was driving away all types of inauspiciousness. Now let's look a little bit in some of the commentaries on this. In his Sarartha Darshani commentary, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that the word ugaitanam, meaning loudly singing, indicates that the gopis, they were absorbed in thinking of Udgaitanam Aravindanam Lochanam. They were absorbed in thinking of lotus-eyed Aravinda Lochan Krishna. And they were feeling his presence. And because of that, they were singing very loudly in great bliss. And they were dressed in very colorful clothing and ornaments. They'd smeared kumkum on themselves. Now, Jiva Vishwanath says a very interesting thing, which is a bit looking back at some of his previous purports in the same chapter. He says, now wait a minute. Ladies don't dress nicely when their beloved is gone, nor do they sing sweetly when they're feeling lamentation and separation. And Vishwanath says, therefore it's understood that at the end of the night, Uddhava was seeing the manifestation of Braj with Krishna present there, just as he saw when he arrived in Braj. So again, this is very important for our discussion about the meeting in Kurukshetra. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives a very astonishing explanation about Braj, saying that there are two compartments in Braj. A compartment of union and a compartment of separation, a place where Krishna is always present. And we're hearing about that in this 46th verse of this 46th chapter, that the gopis are singing in bliss, they're dressed so nicely, because it means that Uddhava now is seeing the chamber of union. So this again is important for our discussion on the meeting in Kurukshetra, because we're going to hear about how these two things in Kurukshetra are simultaneously present, union and separation, and how Jagannath Puri Dham is a container with two opposites, because Jagannath Puri is like Kurukshetra, and Jagannath Puri is Gupta Vrindavan. And in that place, as a container of two opposites, there's both union and separation, and that's Gaura Leela. So this is a very important, very esoteric point that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is making. Now, Jiva Goswami, in his Laghu Vaishnava Toshani, he says that they were churning the yogurt to maintain their proper behavior as members of Braj, because that's what you do. If you're a gopi in Vrindavan, you churn yogurt and you gather gobar and you make cow patties and you sing about Krishna, because everybody sings about Krishna. People are so intoxicated with Krishna and Braj, they're not concerned that why the gopis singing about Krishna, this is not right, they're married. Everybody's singing about Krishna. Their kirtan, their singing about Krishna, is not even a conscious act. It's just an integral part of them. And Jiva says that when they were singing like this, it produced auspiciousness throughout the universe. And he said because they sang very loudly due to their prema, and because many of them were singing, then the sound spread everywhere, touching even the sky. So this is Sankirtan, which Jiva Goswami in Bhakti Sandarbha defines as Samyak Kirtan. He gives two meanings to Samyak. Samyak means complete. So Samyak Kirtan means kirtan that's done loudly, therefore it's complete. Samyak Kirtan means when a lot of people come together and sing, therefore it's complete. Or Samyak Kirtan means prema nam sankirtan, that is complete because of love. And so we're hearing about this kirtan. This is very significant because this is the seed of Gaura Leela. This is the seed of Gauranga Mahaprabhu's kirtan. Sanatana Goswami in Brihad Vaishnava Toshani also indicates that it's significant that the sound of their singing was mixed with the sound of continuous churning. So this is the first connection, the first thing that Uddhava realizes about the gopis of Braj. And several times in several of these verses, it's mentioning about the churning of the yogurt. So this ghee is very significant. Jiva Goswami, in his commentary on Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he defines what is ghee. He says, Ayur Grihitam Iti. that ghee equals lifespan. Ghee equals lifespan, and therefore, according to Ayurveda, ghee is very, very healthy for someone. And according to these verses that's spoken by Shukadev Goswami, the gopis, by their rising up from the night, and the first thing they begin to do is they begin to churn this ghee from butter. They're rising up from their sleeping. And so this indicates something indirectly about the feelings of union and separation. And we'll come back to that. There's an interesting verse, there's an interesting Upanishad for us. It's called the Amrita Bindu Upanishad. We have our Krishna Katamrita Bindu magazine. And this is one of the Yoga Upanishads. Different Upanishads are meant for different practices. This is one of the Yoga Upanishads. In text 20 of that Amrita Bindu Upanishad, it speaks about the significance of ghee and milk. It says there, Jutamiva payasi nigudam bhutte cha vasati vigyanam. Satatam manasi mantaya tevavyam manu mantanu bhutena. So again, the same word, same word is used, mantava, to churn. And it's said here that nigudam means to hid, something hidden. That just like milk, ghee is hidden within milk. Ghee is the payasi, or the essential fluid of milk. So similarly, the self is hidden in the hearts of everyone. And we should churn the mind by meditation on the self. So this verse, I think, of Amrita Bindu Upanishad gives us some clue about the meaning why Sukadeva Goswami is stressing when Uddhava is first meeting the gopis. What is the significance of this dadini amantam, this churning of the yogurt? The gopis, this ghee is their love, as we'll indicate, we'll go on and describe. Jiva Goswami, looking back in Gopal Champu, in the Purva section, chapter 17, he described something about the nature of the gopis' love for Krishna. Ratrin divam vasati chetasi hanta bhava jvala hare utatadira magananam sandhyadvaye vyativiloka sukaja sikta sagni dvijalaya evagnitita samidha. Ratri diva, day and night. Vasasi chetasi hanta bhava, the flames of love for Krishna were burning. Jvala means to burn, was burning in the hearts of those teenage gopis. And when they would see Krishna Sanjadvare, when they would see Krishna in the morning and sunset, that happiness was like ghee being poured on that fire. That fire of the love for the gopis. The seeing Krishna was like that ghee. And that ghee then, sagni dvijalaya, dvi means twice as much. It made that fire, the fire became twice as much from that ghee. In the Govinda Lilamrita, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, in the 11th chapter, text 86, he speaks about the glories of Radharani's words. And what is the speech like of Srimati Radharani? And this has something to do also with our discussion today. Prema janarmali sitara savali madvaki mandasmita chanda samyuta ashyamri sarsya marichan vitad bhuta vani rasola satitisha triptida. Srimati Radharani, the first thing that Kaviraj Goswami says about Radharani's words, they're prem ajja. Ajja means ghee. And that Srimati Radharani, her words are the ghee of prema. And he says that Srimati Radharani's words they're astonishing. That's the first name. They have the pepper of false hatred, the Sita. Sita means pepper. They have the cardamom moon of her soft, sweet smile. They have the taste of sugar in her jokes, which is mixed with this ghee of prem. And all this together produces rasala, and it gives great satisfaction to Krishna. So when Sukadeva Goswami speaks about the churning of this ghee, it has deep, deep purport. This ghee is the love of the gopis and Srimati Radharani. And they're rising up early in the morning and they're singing. And that sound of that singing is mixed with the sound of their churning of that ghee. In the Chaitanya Mangal, in the Madhya Kanda of Lochandas Thakur's wonderful book, in Song 21, he describes a wonderful story, sometimes we give a seminar on, about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instruction that he gave to some of his associates. And I'll go ahead and sing this, and we can explain it. Sabaloka karna garta kunda parisar jiva shrava dvani rasa grita manohar. He says that he speaks to the devotees about the glories of the Sankirtan movement. And he says that in the Sankirtan movement, the living, Sabaloka Karna, Karna means the ear. Sabaloka, everybody's ear is a sacrificial pit, the Garta Kunda Parisar. And the Shrava, or the spoon, in that sacrifice is the tongue of everyone. And Dvani Rasa, the sound of Krishna's glories, that's Grita Manohar. That's the very pleasing ghee. So this is the Sankirtan movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which my Guru Maharaj said, his Sankirtan is the Sankirtan of the gopis. And this is the first thing that Uddhava is coming in contact with when he arrives in Braj. And it dispels the darkness of night. And it establishes auspiciousness everywhere. When the gopis, they begin to sing, their tongues are the sacrificial ladle, and the ears of all the persons of Braj, and as Sanatana Goswami says in Brihad Vaishnav Toshini, all the universe, the whole universe becomes auspicious because of that singing of the gopis. And that sound of the gopis singing, that Dvani Rasa is Grita Manohar. It's very, very pleasing ghee. Mahaprabhu goes on to say, Antare pravishta hana bhava agni jvale agni siksha pula kashru kampa kalivare. He says that when that spoon of the tongue pours the ghee into the openings of the ears, then the ghee enters the heart. And then in the heart, you have Bhava Agni Jvale. That ghee makes the fire of bhakti burn very brightly. And then Agni Siksha, the flames of that fire then, Pulakashu Kampu Kalevare. They make something happen in the body. If you have a fire all of a sudden lit inside your body, something's going to happen. Pulakashu, the hairs stand on end. And you start trembling. You start crying. These are the symptoms of ecstasy. This is samyak kirtan. This is complete kirtan. This is the kirtan of the gopis of Braj. This is the kirtan of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so, as I mentioned previously, these verses have so much deep purport. These are just a few thoughts that have come to our minds about them, and a few things from some of the commentaries. And we've gone a little bit in our own direction also. The sound of this kirtan dispels the inauspiciousness. Nirashite yena disam amangalam. Amangalam means that something inauspicious. The sound of that kirtan. Because the sound of this kirtan brings about union. The sound of this kirtan defeats the darkness of night. And the sound of this kirtan, that's the real light. That's the real jewels on the gopis. That the sound of their kirtan mixed with the sound of their churning the ghee, which represents their love, dispels all inauspiciousness, and it lights up everything in Braj, because it gives union with Krishna. We should understand the deep purport of the meaning of the word viraha and vipralamba. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that viraha means two things. Vi-raha. Vi means Vishesha Rup, and Raha means Rahasya Milan. Vishesha Rup means a special form, and Rahasya means something mysterious, and Milan means union. So it means a special form, a mysterious union with a special form of the Lord. This is a very similar thing to what Jiva Goswami says in Priti Sandarbha, Anucheta 370. He defines Vipralamba as Vipralambo Viparkashena Lamba Praptir Yashyasa Tata. That Vipralamba means, Lamba means to attain something from a distance. So although Vipralamba, the general meaning is separation, Jiva Goswami indicates that indirectly Vipralamba actually means external separation but internal union. And these verses, which are the beginnings or the introduction to the next chapter, this chapter finishes in just a few more verses. I don't think we'll get there today. But the next chapter is the Brahmara Gita, or Uddhava speaking to the gopis. And now Uddhava is beginning to meet the gopis. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his Prema Samput, text 68, he speaks about the lamp of the heart lit with the ghee of love. Prema dvayor rasikayor aidipa eva hridveshma bhasha yati nischala eva bhati dvarad ayam vadanastastu bahiskritas nirvati sigram atava lagutam upaiti. He says that the love, prema dvara, dvara means of two, the love of two rasik persons, aidipa eva, it's just like a lamp. And that lamp, hridveshma basayati nischala eva bhati, that lamp illuminates the home of the heart. Well, this is an important thing also, that the heart is like a hidden place. And that heart is illuminated with this lamp of love. And therefore the word gopi has the same bij dhatu, or same root, as gupta, or hidden. And literally speaking, the word gopi means someone who hides something, someone who hides their love. And Vishwanath is explaining this in Prema Samput, that this lamp of these two rasiks, it illuminates the home of the heart. But he says that if this light, dwara means the gate, dwarad, ayam vedanta, vedanta indicates the mouth, or the place where the teeth are at, dvaram aya vedantu bahiskritascha, that if then it goes outside, then at that time nirvati shigram. Shigram means very, very quickly. Nirvati, it's stopped. Or at least lagutam. Lagu means it means something insignificant. Lagu in Sanskrit is the opposite of guru. Guru means heavy, and lagu means light. So if that light comes through the doorway of the mouth, it's at once dimmed or stopped. So the gopis, their kirtan is indirect kirtan. We often speak about this. they're not speaking directly about their love for Krishna, because, as Vishwanath explains in Prema Samput, that if you have a room when all the windows are closed and all the doors are closed and it's very dark, in that hidden place, then the lamp of love illuminates everything. But as soon as you open the windows or you open the door, then that light goes out. In the same way that as soon as someone starts saying, yes, I love Gurudev. Gurudev and I, we're like this. We're so very, very close. I love you. A rasik jana, prema dvaya rasika eva deepa eva. They hide their love. They don't openly display that. And therefore it said, Gopayed Guru Matmana. Sanatana Goswami in Hari Bhakti Vilas, he quotes Samoyan Tantra, which describes that how a devotee hides his love, how a devotee hides his japamala. He doesn't advertise his bhajan. Because it's said that if you run around and tell everybody how many rounds you're chanting, did you know yesterday I chanted 108 rounds? If you tell someone like that, that means you're a very generous person, because you're giving away the result of some of your bhajan in a cheap way to other persons, in a way that actually doesn't even benefit them, but in a way that just promotes some self-aggrandizement, just promotes yourself. And we give away the jewels of our love. So the gopis, their love for Krishna is like a lamp, and it's like a jewel on them. But that lamp is something which is generally hidden, and therefore it's described as being in the night. But it's described here also by Sukadeva Goswami that the gopis are rising, and this indicates also that this feelings that the gopis have, which Sukadeva Goswami describes as nirashyate yena disamma mangalam, which dispels all all inauspiciousness in all directions. It's going to dispel any inauspiciousness, any misunderstandings in the heart of Uddhava. And it's going to give something much, much more. And that kirtan, which is a private kirtan, the gopis are not running around advertising anything, but they're doing this, Sukadeva Goswami says, in their private homes. But the sound of it, it's udguna. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Hare Krishna Divarnika. This kirtan of the gopis indicates the kirtan of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Rupa Goswami in Lagu Brihad Bhagavatamrita, he gives this verse in his Mangalacharya, that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that this is the kirtan of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Hare Krishna Divarnika, the sound of the Hare Krishna mantra is going everywhere. He's giving us away to everyone. And Majayanti Jagat Premni Vijayanta Dharavaya. It's spreading all over the universe. But this kirtan is mukodgirna. It's arising like a volcano. The gopis they're gupta, they're very, very hidden. They don't advertise their love everywhere to Krishna. But in their Premanam Sankirtan, which has arisen from the feelings of separation, Krishna has invoked this kirtan of the gopis by leaving Vrindavan. Now the kirtan of the gopis has become so intense that it's become mukodgirna. It's just erupting. You can't stop an eruption. When a volcano begins to erupt, you can't stop it. You can't stop the kirtan of the gopis. It's not done with some consideration. Oh, I think I'll go to kirtan this morning in the temple. Oh, actually, I'm feeling a little tired. Maybe I won't give up this morning. There's no consideration like that for the gopis. It's just erupting like a volcano. It's just coming out. And that eruption, this is the lamp of their hearts, which is illuminating their bodies, which is the jewel of their bodies. And it's illuminating the whole universe. It illuminates the heart of anyone who comes in contact with it. And so Krishna sending Uddhava to Braj is really the beginning of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Prema-Nam Sankirtan movement. This is the kirtan of the Gopis. And this ghee of the Gopis, their love, this is aya grihitam iti. This ghee equals life. My Guru Maharaj said that kirtan means life. And we should chant. But this chanting is not like the chanting, the meow of a kitten, but it's like the roaring of a lion. It's something which is udguna, which erupts from the heart. It's not something which we calculate about. This is the kirtan of the love of the Gopis. It's like a very, very intense fire. And the wonderful thing of this kirtan is that when the Gopis, they're pouring this ghee in the fire of their hearts, that fire, it comes out through their mouths, and that sound makes the whole entire universe become auspicious. And then Sabaloka Karna Garta Kunda Parisar. Then the living entities, their ears are the sacrificial pit. So we want to take this kirtan of our sampradaya, this kirtan of the Gopis, we want to take this out in the street. This is the yajna of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the yajna which began with Krishna leaving Vrindavan and sending Uddhava. And Uddhava now coming in contact with the kirtan of the Gopis, which is just like ghee being poured on fire, and the lamps are lighting up the jewels of their hearts. So this Sankirtan movement, this yajna means that we have to take that kirtan, and that's not was it Jiva Goswami in Laghu Vaishnava Toshi in the 6th canto. He is not Kabbalah, which is done for some religious activity. Oh, I think we should go to chant in front of the Jagannath Mandir today. We should go and do Harinam today because this is the Yuga Dharma Prabhu. This is our religion. That's nice. It's nice you're doing some religion, but that's not the kirtan of the Gopis. The kirtan of the Gopis is exploding like a volcano. And we want to take that Prema-Nam Sankirtan, which is Samyak Kirtan, which is a great lamp, and we want to pour that sound into the ears of all living entities. So what is the difference between that Sneha Samyukta Nam Kirtan and this Kevala Nam Kirtan, or common Kirtan? Common Kirtan, there's no conception with it. And as I sometimes comment, not to spoil anybody's party, but as I sometimes comment, I'm not so inspired just by sometimes the kirtan melas that go on. That's wonderful that there's some kirtan mela, but if there's no sneha samyukta, if there's no love which is given to us through these literatures of our Goswamis, if we don't understand the ghee of the heart of the Gopis, which is burning as a very, very intense lamp, then what kind of kirtan will we do? And it may just be that common kirtan, that common name. But this kirtan of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this kirtan of the Gopis, this is Sneha Samyukta Nam. And that's the ghee. We have to have that ghee. So how do we get that ghee? It begins Shravanam. Before kirtan, we have Shravan. And that Shravan is of two types. It's Krishna Kirtan. Srila Prabhupada sat down underneath a tree in Tompkins Square Park, and he chanted Hare Krishna. But he didn't only chant, he also spoke something. And he explained something to those hippies and people who were present there about the meaning of that mantra. And if you listen to those early classes that Srila Prabhupada was giving on 26 Second Avenue, they're very astonishing classes. Prabhupada's speaking about Braj Leela, he's speaking about Prema-Nam Sankirtan, he's speaking about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in a very, very high way, because this is our movement. And by hearing this thing, it gives some fuel to our kirtan. When the jiva shrava, or the spoon of the tongue, which is carrying that pleasing ghee of Krishna's name, which is sneha samyuktanam, that we've gotten through our disciplic succession, through our service to Guru. And our best service is the Sankirtan Yajna. By doing this service, even if we may not be having this Premanam Sankirtan, we may not be chanting it, but we can carry it. We can carry what we've heard. But that hearing is not just a one-dimensional thing like a tape recorder. Just as Srila Prabhupada several times, he said that you can play a recording of me speaking and it sounds like I'm there, but I'm not. So there's a difference between that recording. Otherwise, just like I remember seeing some of our Ridvik friends doing Harinam once in Vrindavan. And there was one devotee going by himself, and he was following a cart. And on the cart, there was a recording being played through a speaker of Srila Prabhupada doing kirtan. It was one of the early recordings from 26 Second Avenue, but they changed it. They took out the sound of all the devotees doing kirtan, and all you could hear was Srila Prabhupada. So that's their idea of kirtan. It's one-dimensional. That kirtan, you can't take away the living entities from that kirtan. You can't just have Srila Prabhupada's kirtan without the devotees. And you can't have that kirtan without Krishna Katha. So the first part is Shravan. We have to hear from Gurudev. And then we serve that hearing by repeating it, by doing kirtan ourselves. And Shri Shoshadadana Shavasudeva Katha Richishan Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punya Tirthana Sevana. When we do that service, that most important service of the kirtan of our sampradaya, which is being indicated in these verses, indirectly by Shukadev Goswami, then we please our Gurudev. And that lamp of love will begin to burn in our heart. And that's the real meaning of Shravan. Shravan just doesn't mean that I memorize something, I pass a test, what are the most important topics of the Bhagavad Gita, what are the main verses of the Bhagavad Gita, or I have some information. But Shravan means that this thing enters my heart through service. And to teach us that, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came as a devotee to do service to the Gopis and Srimati Radharani. So I'm going to go ahead and stop here. And in our next session, which will be next Tuesday, we plan, if Krishna allows, to continue these sessions every Tuesday, which will be our Tuesday here in India, which is our morning, which I think may be Monday night for some devotees in America. We'll continue with text number 47, and we'll try to go on to finish this chapter in our next session. But before we finish today, I'd just like to humbly request, if any of the devotees have any reflections, what it was you're walking away with today that you'd like to keep, what any reflections you may have on this discussion today, or perhaps any questions or comments. And I want to welcome Natalia from Estonia, who's here, and our dear mother, Anavadyangi, from Stagecoach, Nevada. She says, Haribol from Stagecoach, Nevada, my favorite story. And also Krishna Priya, thank you for taking part today. So if anybody has any comments, reflections, that we can discuss that. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and stop. If you have something, you can go ahead and write on. Anybody here in the room have anything they'd like to share? What your favorite thing you're walking away with today? Natalia, she's commented, she says it's an amazing comparison of the Gopis' kirtan with the roaring of a lion and exploding of a volcano. They really should be unconscious about its effect while singing and cherishing Krishna's presence and separation. And their love of the highest content is spreading around. Because this is the nature of the Gopis. They hide things. This is the nature of Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement. It begins behind closed doors and it ends behind closed doors. Because actually it's something very, very private. But when that kirtan of the Gopis is infused with the fire, the Vipralamba Agni, the fire of separation, then it begins to explode like a volcano. And they're not even conscious anymore of what they're singing, what they're doing. This is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Premanam Sankirtan. Mother Anavatangi says, Monday night here, wow, your description of Kirtan. And Brinda Sundari, in the distant place known as Denver, Colorado, she says, so many stunning analogies in this section. And Anavatangi is going on saying, thank you for explaining how Kirtan should be performed. We should understand what is the Kirtan of our Sampradaya. It means the Kirtan of the Gopis. Okay, anything else from anybody? Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll stop there. I want to thank everybody very much for taking part again. It's our life to do this kirtan, to try to repeat what we've heard. My Guru Maharaj used to say that the function of Guru is to speak. And the Guru, he speaks Sabda Brahma. And it's the function of the disciple to hear. And then after the disciple's heard, what does the Guru do? The Guru tells him, now you should repeat this. And my Guru Maharaj says, so that kirtan of the disciple is another name for Shravan. Because really he's just repeating what he's heard from his Guru. And this is our kirtan of our Sampradaya. The kirtan of our Sampradaya. We're serving our previous acharyas by repeating what we've heard from them. And again, that repeating is not just Hare Krishna, the syllables of the holy name, but it's the love of the gopis which we hear about in Gopal Champu. We hear about in the 46th and 47th chapters of the 10th canto when Uddhava comes there. Brinda Sundari goes on to say, so many wonderful points today, so many to take heart. And Anavatangi is asking, is this being recorded? Yes, it's being recorded right now on Facebook and also on my good wife's phone. And Krishna Kund is here. She has some reflections and you'd like to share. Let me just move the mic.
I was really struck by this point that the gopas and the cows, and I guess Raktak, Bhaktak, like the Krishna servants also, they feel, because of their Vishwambhena love, that Krishna is with them. And when there is a spurti of Krishna next to them, they believe it's Krishna. And it would disturb them if somebody started to preach to them that Krishna will come back. It will create doubts in them. Whereas the gopis and Nanda and Yashoda, they can't survive. And I was struck by this point specifically because we can kind of see why Srila Prabhupada was from the very beginning stressing to us separation. And it's connected to where he wants to take us. It's connected to what he wants to give to us. And I mean, I don't really want to go there right now, but some devotees feel that Srila Prabhupada is a cowherd boy. If he were a cowherd boy, he would not be speaking about separation. Just that's all for now.
That's a very interesting comment. If Prabhupada was a cowherd boy, he wouldn't be feeling so much separation. Yes, Jiva Goswami says two things in Laghu Vaishnava Toshani, we're repeating today, that one is that the cowherd boys, they have the spurti, and they think that's really Krishna. Krishna's really there. Mother Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj, and the gopis, they also have spurtis, but they don't trust it. And even when Krishna personally comes, they don't trust that. They don't trust you're really gonna stay here. The cowherd boys, when they have that spurti, they really feel Krishna's there. And the second thing Jiva Goswami says about the cowherd boys' love is that they really believe that Krishna's going to return. He definitely is going to return. So if Uddhava comes and starts speaking to them that, don't worry, Krishna's going to return, then the cowherd boys are going to say, wait, what do you mean? What are you saying? You mean he may not return? Anavatangi is asked a question. She says, I'm here all alone in this desert. How can I bring kirtan here? She's literally in the middle of a desert in a place called Stagecoach, Nevada. And how can we bring that kirtan there? Well, you've done such a wonderful job over the years of bringing Sura Prabhu and bringing so many devotees there and encouraging that kirtan. But that kirtan, as we are hearing it today, the ghee that's being churned and the lamps that are being lit, it's something very, very private. And this Sankirtan movement, again, of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu begins in Srivasanga behind closed doors. And it ends behind closed doors in the Gambhira. So sometimes we find ourselves in a situation where we can go out in public and we can chant, or we can go out to the Burning Man festival, which Anavadyangi is one of the founders of the devotees going there, maybe the main founder of that. Sometimes we can go out in public like that. But then other times there's a pandemic and Krishna's arranged that we can't do that. So then at that time, that lamp of kirtan, it should burn brightly in our hearts in a private way. Because really, this kirtan is going to have to begin at home. It's going to have to begin in the desert of our hearts. We have to illuminate that first. We can go out in a mechanical way, try to chant in the streets, maybe in a very musical way even, which is very entertaining. And certainly there's great benefit for that, especially in as much as we're doing it as service for Srila Prabhupada and our Guru Janas. But as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta used to sometimes quote from his father, Thakur Bhaktivinoda, let's see if I can... I was just meditating on this just yesterday. Let's see here. There's a very beautiful statement, he says. I'd like to just read it if I can. Oh, I don't see it here. I know where it's at. Let me just find it. He speaks about preaching and what is really preaching. Okay. Oh, I know where it was. There it is. He says that Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta is repeating his father. Our father told us, don't hear from the mouths of persons lacking proper conduct. If your conduct is below par, you should not publicly preach about the Lord. Close the door and preach to yourself. This is one of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's favorite statements from his father. If your conduct is below par, don't publicly preach about the Lord. Close the door and preach to yourself. So that's the beginning of this Premanam Sankirtan movement. This is the love of the gopis. They're chanting behind closed doors. So, and this is, as we spoke recently on the Sunday Feast program a couple of days ago for the devotees in Boston, this was what brought about the advent of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The closed door kirtan of the devotees with Advaita Acharya and how they were crying and crying. We can't do anything. We can't go outside. People won't listen to us. But that crying of their kirtan was so intense that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally came. And Krishna will come to our hearts if we have that kind of kirtan. The devotees will come to us externally. Guru will come to us externally. Everything will come. And Subal Sham Prabhu, nice to see you here, and Rajesh Prabhu, Ananda. I think Krishna Kun, you had some other reflection you want to share?
I did, but it was to the previous point. I don't know if it's still so relevant. I was just remembering Brihad Bhagavatamrita, where Sanatana Goswami explains the difference between the love of the gopis and the gopas. And he specifically says there that the gopas are convinced that Krishna loves them, and they always feel so loved by Krishna. But the gopis are always crying that may I become even the lowliest of maidservant of Krishna's maidservants. And
yes.
So I just remember
gopis, the nature of their love is they think I have no love.
Yeah.
But the cowherd boys, we love you.
And he loves them.
And he loves us. Anavadyangi Mataji is saying, wow, I'm so below par and I'm in my room behind closed doors with earphones on. We want to hear. And we want to share these things with other devotees. So right now, how can we do that? We can't come together. I can't get any of the wonderful prasadam cooked by my mother, Anavadyangi. I can't sit in the room and talk with her. I can't get a hug from her. Oops, maybe I'm not supposed to do that. But at least we can come together on this strange form of internet, a strange kind of meeting. Yes?
I have a question about this statement. That's through our service with Guru.
So Krishna Kun is asking about my comment that through our service to Guru, Huh?
We may not have that.
We may
love,
not
but we
have
can
that love, but we
carry
can carry it. What does that mean? We can carry it. We can carry that in the sound vibration. We can broadcast that as best that we can. But by carrying that, that's also a service. By repeating that's the kirtan of the disciple. It may not be realized, but when we repeat what we've heard, as my grandmas used to say, you hear first, then you read, then you write, then you speak. You hear something from an authorized source, he told me. You, after hearing from that source, then you read in Prabhupada's books and the books of our acharyas. Oh, I remember Gurudev spoke about this. Now I understand something about it. And then you write it down. And by writing it down, then you come to understand it. And he said, then after reading, hearing, reading, writing, then you speak it. And by speaking it, he said, it becomes yours. It belongs to you. Anavadyangi Mataji, you're my dear mother. I worry about you sometimes. You take care of yourself. Okay? Okay, if nobody else has any other last reflections or comments, we'll go ahead and stop here. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bo, Vancha Kalpa Darubhishcha, Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam